Katie, Brian, and Adrian, and a couple of guests, Cassidy and Joel. Is that right?
Looks like we have
Oh.
Ann C. who just joined us.
Hi, Anne.
Hello.
Welcome to the meeting tonight.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. I'm glad you could be, we could all be here together. I'm going to read through the agenda. And if anyone has any questions about it or has any additional items they'd like discussed, please let me know. We're going to begin with an ADA coordinator report from Adrian Pomeroy. I have a brief report to go over as well. And then we are going to do some continued business, which includes a discussion on the bylaws and and a variance request with Tufts. It's the same one we've looked at a few times. They've made some changes and they would like us to review it again. And we're going to talk about some new business, about some subcommittees, some future goals or next steps around the funding that we have. And then if there are any public questions or comments, we'll open up the floor. Does anyone have any questions about the agenda or anything additional they'd like added? Okay, then. I see there's a chat. Okay. Adrian, would you like to go next?
Sure. I actually don't have that much. The ADA community survey is still open, as you all know. If you know of any folks who would like to take it, working in or living in Somerville is very helpful. We are also very much trying to get folks whose English is not their primary language to engage with it as well. And so accessibility affects everybody. We know this. So people can contact me if the jot form is not the best way for them to take it, and we can figure that out. I will be popping up with a colleague from 3 to 5 p.m. tomorrow at the East Branch Library to talk about the survey and engage with some folks there. And then we will have some other RSJ team members not on the community path, but near the community path at Cedar Street on Thursday afternoon between 4:30 and 6:30 to talk about the survey and some other RSJ events and things going on. And then next week, we will have 2 folks from RSJ at the West Branch Library on Wednesday from 3 to 5. And then myself and another colleague will be at Diesel Cafe in Davis Square on next Friday morning. So sort of if folks want to take the survey, RSJ is happy anyways to buy. So come get a cup of coffee on RSJ, talk to us, take the survey. So yeah, that'll be happening next Friday morning from 10 to 11 a.m. at Diesel in Davis Square. And that's all I had because everything else Holly already put on the agenda. So.
Thank you, Adrian.
You're welcome.
Do you have any updates as to how many people have applied for the 3 open seats that we have?
Last I checked, sorry, I have cat zoomies. Last I checked, I think we had 3 or 4, and RSJ held the Juneteenth flag raising last evening at City Hall, and we had a couple people who expressed interest, and so they're going to reach out to me with their letter. So I'm hoping to get that this week.
Okay. And then when can we start the interview process, which will be a subcommittee that you will be a part of as well, like we did the last one?
Let me double check with Hannah. I think as soon as we feel we have a good amount of applications, we can start that process. Yeah, I will check with Hannah tomorrow.
It would be nice if we had sort of a goal of when we start reviewing them. That doesn't mean that we close the call for seats.
Sure.
So if we have, two great candidates and we want to put them forward, we can still continue to receive more applicants and be able to just move forward with those that we at this time would like to put forth, rather than waiting for another month or so.
Understood. I will check with Hannah tomorrow.
Do you think you'll have some information by the end of next week that you could share with me?
Probably sooner than that.
Okay.
I'll just ping her tomorrow. Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item 4, which is the chair's report. I have a few fun things to share. Adrian and I were at Somerville High School, maybe 3 weeks ago now, Adrian, at the Somerville High School scholarship event. And we presented 10 students with $5,000 scholarships. It was very exciting. As part of the review process, when we looked at applicants, everything, May 24th. Thank you, Adrian. We had no demographic information, and we didn't know names. We had very little information. Well, we were very specific, which I know we went over in our last meeting, at the information that we reviewed. And when they sent me a list of who the winners were, I didn't look at it. I got it like the day before, because again, I wanted this to be, I didn't want to know who anyone was until that night. So I was expecting to have the names coincide with the student ID numbers, but that wasn't there. I had written a small speech, or a little paragraph about each of these 10 students. So I got to speak about the commission, and I got to speak about sort of the process. And in general, I got to talk about the candidates. So I think if we do this next year, the process will be a little more refined. There were lots of scholarships given out, and the students were amazing, very excited. And they don't know, they're told they have a scholarship. There's, I mean, almost 200 scholarships, all different ranges, all different criteria. They don't know which ones they've received, and they don't know what the scholarship is until they get called up. So it was great. The next thing I want to talk
Can you
about.
tell us anything about, just really quickly, anything about them?
Oh yeah, of course.
Just a little bit, no.
Oh, sure. So we had, see, I hope I have my notes right here. Let me look at that in a bit when I have a moment, because I just don't want to hold us up, but I will definitely give you that before we close. So on July 26th in 1990, President George Bush signed into law the Americans with Disability Act, ADA. It was 33 years ago. And there are many celebrations of this piece of law. So on July 26th, I'd like to propose that we offer tickets to the Red Sox game. The Red Sox is having their annual, I need my little picture. Come on, Holly. Their annual Disability Pride celebration. And everyone who attends will get a very special Red Sox hat. The hats are red. They have the Disability Pride flag, as well as the words Red Sox in Braille. Not sure how best to, wonder if I text this to you, Adrian, will you be able to display it? I know some of us be able to see the image, but it's this beautiful red hat. It's to celebrate not just the ADA, but it's a very important game. And I've called to see if we can get some tickets as a group and to see if we can advertise these tickets. I'm not sure what outlet we would be able to do that through, whether it be the schools, whether it be the city's website, what if it would be the Somerville, losing my words today. different groups who would be interested in this. And depending on how many tickets we would have, we could get a bus, we could bring everybody there, we could bring everyone back to the high school. Does anyone have any thoughts about having a Red Sox trip to celebrate the ADA anniversary? Adrian, you look like you,
I have my thinking
Disability.
caps on, I'm well aware.
the Disability Pride celebration. I really need to have my,
Yeah, a former colleague of mine went last year with
oh,
former board member, I remember. So I think you have to look at it from two sort of different perspectives, viewpoints. And I think I probably have as your staff liaison, I have to probably look into some things with the financials. So one thing you could do is we could try to organize a trip for people involved with the commission just to go, like, a field trip to the baseball game. That's one option. If the commission, which I think this sounds like the option you're considering, wants to buy a select number of tickets for this particular evening and then turn around and advertise to our community, the Somerville community, and then organize a trip from there. I think I would just have to check on not only logistics, but sort of the financial things with that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that feedback.
But is
Would-
that what I'm hearing, Holly, that you want to, I'm assuming using the parking funds, is that correct?
Yes, I
Okay.
think this would be a great opportunity to celebrate people with disabilities.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot of fun to bring people to a Red Sox game if they have interest in that. The only steps I've done so far is to reach out to see if there are tickets available. And I also requested to have some wheelchair accessible seating. And I wanted to throw the idea out there tonight to see if there was interest. And if people have questions about that, we'd have to review sort of a budget amount and vote on that now. But then we'd have to review the logistics and figure out what we can do with that amount, only because it's June. Well, actually, we probably will be able to have something before July, but we'll need something in place so we can review those opportunities.
Yeah, that's the biggest, you mentioned budget, that's the thing I have to check, is because what are the logistics of, say the commission wanted to buy, I'm just throwing a number out, 20 tickets. And and at whatever price, how is the city going to pay for that on behalf of you?
We'll figure.
Yeah.
Definitely the kind of challenges we can figure out. I appreciate you thinking about that part. I'm kind of still on the creative side to see who thinks that's a good idea, or if they would like to attend, or certain communities that you think we should advertise this with. Harriet, I see your hand up, or Frank.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great idea. And I think one of the things, if we can make it, it doesn't have to be a huge number of people, but if we can make it not only the commission members, but others, probably people we would personally invite and so forth. The idea is also to have the commission sort of public facing in a way of recognizing the ADA and just sort of something lively, something important, and there are a lot of baseball fans around here. Pauline, you're a number one baseball fan, if I'm not mistaken.
I was just trying to get a word in to find out if we were eligible to, to do this.
Yeah, that's what I have to figure out that part. But Pauline, did you not Pauline, I think you told me you have never been to Fenway. Is that correct?
Oh, no, I've been to Fenway a lot.
Oh, okay. You've
I
never
used to
been to
go a lot.
opening day at Fenway. Is that right?
I don't think I ever got to opening day. No, I never did go
Okay.
to opening day.
Okay.
And I
It was
see
always
that
too cold.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Anne,
Anne
you
has her
have your
hand up.
hand raised. Did you want to add some comments?
Are we able to talk if we're not part of the committee?
I am the chair and I'm happy to allow you to.
Thank you.
Sometimes
So
time
I know,
permitting.
I know people who work there, and I can ask if there's a way to get, tickets or cheaper. Did you call and ask if there were tickets you could get for free, like a certain amount or anything?
So I emailed the contact for group tickets. I
Yeah.
explained who we were. I estimated, I don't know if I said 15 or 20 tickets, of which maybe 4 or 5, at least 4 could be accessible. I didn't ask for a discount. I think part of this is not just the game, but there's a donation involved. And I would like the part of the donation to be that we're going to purchase tickets and we're going to give them to people who would like to come. So
I
we'd be funding this trip. We have some funds that are
Should
allocated.
I
for
ask
that.
the people I know that work there, or no? Is
If
that,
you want to, that would be
Yes.
great.
yeah,
And
I'll do that.
I'm hoping I
And
hear
if
back.
someone wanted to make a donation, they could to you, to the
So
commission?
my process is that we would purchase the tickets. We have to figure out how that vehicle would work. We would purchase the tickets and then we would have a means to allow people to join, some way to distribute these tickets fairly. And then I
Right.
think the safest thing would be to have a bus at the high school that went to the game and then a bus that brought everybody back. And the logistics, all of that.
If someone wanted to donate money for this,
No, nobody needs to
Oh,
donate
okay.
money to join. I believe the ticket price
no,
is.
not to join, but just donate money to the commission. I mean, there's no way.
No,
No, they can't accept that because they're at the city.
Oh, okay.
you can donate to the high school or other organizations within the city. I always like the Somerville High School Scholarship Foundation, but those are
But why
entirely
is that?
up to you.
How come? Because you're a city, or why is that?
So we're not set up as an agency. We're a commission within the city. We are employees.
Yes.
We're not paid employees,
see.
and for reasons like that, we don't accept
Oh,
for donations. But I know your heart's in the right place, so thank you for suggesting that. Kate, do you have any feedback about a Red Sox event?
I like the idea of the group getting together in person for something fun. I think that a lot of times when we meet, we're little squares and we have to just talk about business, but I would like to get to know you all a little bit. And I think that would be a fun way to do it. I'm not a baseball fan, but I like to go to the park. It's fun. I like to
be a
eat
lot of fun.
peanuts and throw the shells on the ground. And
Oh, yes.
that's the only.
Deborah, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I'm with Kate. I think it would be a good bonding activity and great way to celebrate the idea.
Brian, any words you'd like to add? We'll check
Sorry,
back.
this is Brian. I had to run away and get my
No worries.
phone, which I had dropped. I'm honestly not a sports fan, so I don't think this is probably the best venue for me.
That's okay.
I do, however, believe that a group outing of the commission is a fantastic idea, or some sort of get together in person. We've not met in person for multiple years now. I think would be a really good idea. I question whether funding ourselves out of city funds to go to a baseball game is the right use of city funds. But that's really not my decision to make.
That's okay. You're entitled to sharing your thoughts. I appreciate that. The goal was really to, we can certainly include ourselves, but to invite people from the city to join us. And it was to really celebrate the ADA and using the parking fines funds that we have, it does fall into the category. It could also turn out to be something that several of us go to, or again, it all hinges on the ability to get tickets and of course the back office work of what the process is for us to use our funds, et cetera.
Yeah. How would we decide who gets tickets? I have to
So-
believe that if we put them up for even just people with disabilities in Somerville, we would have a waiting list.
I think the first step is to see how many tickets we can get.
Mhm.
And then to figure out how the process would be to purchase them. And then we would be able to figure out the best way to advertise or to invite people to join us. But I do think it's nothing about us without us. And we're all in this commission because we're deeply invested in what we're doing, and being able to celebrate the anniversary with people across the city was the umbrella idea for this. And what's interesting is this event, Harriet and I attended was it MOD, Harriet? They have a monthly Massachusetts Commission on Disability meeting. Our firm Fenneman runs it. And it was either Boston or Cambridge talked about this event and all the things that they were planning. And it made me start thinking about we should be doing something in Somerville as well. The first thought was this baseball event, and I had some other thoughts that we can talk about later. I'm gonna table the baseball conversation till a little bit later on to when we have a few things to vote and discuss. Let me see. Oh, so I think that's it for my update. Oh, no, pardon me. One other, no, I'm really sorry. I'm having a really hard day. I'm good with my updates. I think we're going to go over to continued business next, which is the bylaws. And the first thing that we need to discuss is the code of conduct. The code of conduct needs to be memorialized in our bylaws, which require us to vote. If anyone has a question about this code of conduct, please reach out to Adrian if you haven't already. Each of us needs to sign this document and return a copy to Adrian. And unless anyone has any questions about the code of conduct, I'm going to make a motion to accept the code of conduct into our bylaws.
I second it.
Um,
I'm going to open up to comments and questions before voting.
Yeah, but I could second your motion and now we can discuss, right?
Yes, you may.
Last month, Adrian, you were going to see if there was specific language that that I believe it was Hannah wanted us to put in our bylaws that would reference the code of conduct. Like how do we aside from carbon copying the entire code of conduct into our bylaws, which I don't think is the intent, how do we reference it in a manner that is effective and meeting their expectations?
So
You're correct, Brian. I'm just trying to find where I captured that language. Because I
It's-
can't remember where it lives.
if you don't have it, I can find it very quickly. It's one or two sentences that boils down to us as a commission saying that we adopt the code of conduct, and please see that, and then see attachment B, and then that literally the entire code of conduct becomes like an addendum to our bylaws.
Right. That's fair.
And any codes or any governance that the city of Somerville puts in place, we have to abide by.
Right.
Have our bylaws, but we always must abide by the city's ordinances. So this code of conduct is part of that. So it makes perfect sense that we need to reference it. However, regardless if we reference it or not, we are still required to follow it. So I think it's important to do what the city is asking us to do, to put it into our bylaws and then to include it as an addendum. You found it, Adrian?
I did, and it's exactly what you said. So I
No, it
didn't-
must be much more eloquent than what I said.
No, it's pretty much what you said.
Would you mind reading it?
Well, I lost it again, Holly. because-
Okay, that's okay.
Just speak it again, Holly.
I have no eloquence at this point in time.
Yes, you do.
Ugh.
Thank you for your support.
Well, let me see if I can bring it back.
While Adrian's looking for that language, I'm gonna redirect us to something else that we need to vote on. I sent you all out the latest variance request from Tufts University for 123 Packard Ave in Somerville. We've reviewed this variance request a few times already. And what we wrote against or not in favor of was they did not want to have to provide an elevator so that there would be accessibility at the ground level and the first, second, and third floors. And so that was denied, and they went back and they drew some new designs for the building, and they found a different type of an elevator. Oh, it's called a Lula lift. The one constraint with the Lula lift is that it will only provide access to the lower levels, but not the third floor. So the third floor will have an accessible route and have accessible rooms, but no access to it. I can read to you the line within the exact piece from the variance request. And actually, I'm going to start with first part. So the law says, in all multi-story buildings and facilities, each level, including mezzanine, shall be served by a passenger elevator. If more than one elevator is provided, each elevator shall comply. And then it has the Massachusetts Code of Regulations 521-28.00. Accessible elevators shall be on an accessible route and located within the space which it is intended to serve. So what they are saying is that the third floor, which is being designed as accessible, will not be provided with an accessible route. The lower 3 floors will provide 4 accessible sleeping rooms, which is more than would be required for the building. I'm just going to not comment on that piece. I believe there will be 26 rooms and what did it say, 4 accessible rooms. The reason that they feel that they do not need to provide access on that floor is, I'm sorry. Here it is. As there are accessible sleeping rooms, bathing rooms, toilet rooms, and accessible common space at the lower 3 floors, the cost of providing an elevator and extending its reach to the upper floor does not provide substantial benefit to occupants to occupants beyond the proposed conditions. It should be noted that the third floor has been made otherwise accessible within restrooms, kitchen space, and a select residential unit. I see that as everything's accessible, but nobody can get to it. That's how I read into that.
So how come it's accessible?
I think what they mean is the hallways will be accessible. I'm gonna let Brian share this because this is your wheelhouse.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to put the clap hands emoji. I meant to
Okay,
say-
clapping's fine. Clap away, Brian.
I think there is a nuance to saying that a floor is accessible, even though it is not accessible by an elevator or wheelchair lift. There is more to accessibility than just the accessibility of person in a wheeled device. There are accessibility rules for construction with regards to people who have trouble walking, accessibility requirements for people who are blind. So I think they have, like, that is a legitimate and an appropriate thing to say. I think there is an argument that all floors should be fully accessible, but it is an appropriate thing to say if one were to get a variance for not having a lift that goes to a floor, you should still make that floor fully accessible for all of the other people who can get there, who are disabled, but don't need an elevator to get there.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Pauline, did that answer your question or do you want,
Yeah, I guess, yeah, it does. It's just that when people seem to throw that word accessible around so much, you wonder, what they mean, whether it's fully accessible or not, or semi-accessible. It's
the proof is in the design and the final walkthrough. And one thing that we've been provided is drawings. They were included in what I sent out to you. They're a little hard for myself to follow along, to understand. You cannot blow them up wide enough to see like a turning radius or to understand if there's a slope or how wide a door is. There were many pictures that they provided that were the result of an audit done by a third party to assess the what would need to be done to bring the building up to the ADA code. And when you look at the pictures, which I can describe, if that would be helpful, and you look at the plan, the drawing, it's very hard to see how you got from where it is now to where it will be. So I agree, Pauline, it is hearing someone says made otherwise accessible. It's a little bit subjective. Any other comments? Should we pull up the designs or look at the rooms together?
Oh, there are 3 hands raised.
Let her know that.
Frank and Harriet.
And there's others too, I guess.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say the following. I feel as though if accessibility is a universal design accessibility, which is the intention of the law, then the last upper floor needs to also have an elevator. The second comment I have to say is that Frank investigated the Lula lift.
Oh, good.
Very cursory.
And cursorily, but there is a major interesting thing to note. It only can hold up to 1,200 pounds.
Yeah.
Wait, so just imagine,
And it must only be for use by people with wheelchairs.
And I can I can assure all of us with students that would not be the case, and that it's highly likely that many students would climb in and not pay attention to the notice that
The,
says.
the inspection requirements are much less stringent, which is where a lot of the cost savings will come. It's a per month thing, an ongoing cost of monthly inspections, whereas a Lula will only need 2 inspections a year.
So I have issues with that.
About the weight capacity, did you think that would be an issue as well?
Yes, I do, because first of all, if there is only one wheelchair user in the building, for example, maybe 2, there can be up to 4. I feel certain that even if it says reserved for students who have, mobility issues, I still don't think that students will mind that. So that concerns me. I mean, it's just, it's just
So
general.
that's a valid concern, but that's more behavior than it is that the weight would be dangerous. That's what I was trying to tease out, the two.
Yeah, no, you're correct, but at the same time, I go back to universal design.
I agree, completely agree.
Just
Um,
in so many situations with people, who are wheelchair users, and it's like, oh, I can go there, but you can't,
Deborah, I see your hand raised.
Yes, my issue is that there is a practical issue with dorms, and that's just having a place to sleep and bathe and so on, and they feel like they're covering that, but there's a social component of dorms, and to say that they're not able to engage with people on the 3rd floor unless people come down, there's a social segregation that's happening to anybody who is dependent on using the Lula lift.
That's a very
And
good point.
I find that to be a problem.
I see Anne. Does anyone else have
That
any
would,
questions or comments? Go ahead, Anne.
what Deborah just said was going to be my point too. That if things are happening up there, they're not included. And I don't understand this ADA idea. I fought hard for that elevator on the top of Prospect Street for the Green Line. I went into RTAG he knows, but every week I went into their business meetings and everything. And so their idea that if it's no more than what people have to walk, I forget how it went, but the ADA just doesn't make any sense. And I would like to be on any committee or fight for anything and with that to get that elevator to go to the 3rd floor. And I don't know about the Lula, but yeah, doesn't
Well,
sound
thank
too bad.
you
I mean,
Thank
it's
you for
something.
saying that. I think that the question is, I don't like the idea that it's not all floors for multiple reasons besides what we have already discussed. And I don't know enough about the Lula lift, even though Frank, you've done some research. I would certainly be interested in understanding the role and how it gets inspected. And I don't know, Brian, if that's part of engineering or if that's outside of your realm. So I had an elevator on my home and it went from the ground floor to the 1st floor of our house. And there was a lot of, requirements. It was private, so we didn't have, and it was locked, so we didn't have any issues. But there was a lot of legal and requirements of how we had it installed and how the certain things that it had to have in place. And we were always worried because the weight limit was like 500 pounds or 600 pounds. And if you have a power chair, which wasn't our issue. Does anyone else on the commission have any concerns or does anyone feel in favor of granting this variance request?
I have a question. Is
Sure.
the issue, Brian, when you are on, if in new buildings, you can't, I'm imagining with a new building, you can't apply for variances. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So
The
variance
only,
are, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
the only reason why they even have the ability to apply for a variance in this case is because there is, since it is a renovation, there's an argument that it is, I forget, there's a criteria, an infeasibility criteria, and I don't recall what the terminology is offhand, but basically it does come down to dollars, where the cost of that improvement would exceed some threshold relative to the overall renovation costs. And so that's why it's there. There may also be a structural / historical reason, because I'm sure this is a historical building. But I'm just glancing through this. I don't see anything that calls that into particular question, but I have seen that being a valid concern on other projects.
So I can read to you what they put on the application, and this is in their own words. I did talk about sort of the ending already, but it says that an elevator,
Can you tell me what page you're reading?
I'm reading my notes that are cut and paste. So give me
Oh.
1 second and I can open up that file real quick. You've got my secret now. I have notes.
In the attached document.
I think it's on what's called page 2. After page 9 of 9, it then goes on to,
Ooh, so there are 40 pages.
Yeah.
right, yeah, well,
Here we go. Some of it is,
Oh, in the code red section. I see.
yeah, and the code red page 2, 1 or 2.
so Code Red is the consultants that did the review of it. And looked at what the existing were. And if you look at like page 3, you can see some of the, you can see the kitchen, the bathroom, what the hallways look like, the front of the building. And then you have the, I want to say it's a schematic of the lower first, second, and third floors of the building. And it shows where the elevator with the Lula would be. It looks like it is inside, not outside.
Mhm.
And the part, I don't know if there's value in us displaying these, or if it's easier for the commission to look at the copies that they were sent. But if someone would like me to screen share, I'd be happy to.
What do you call that elevator? I'm not getting the word.
Lula, L-U-L-A.
Okay. Okay.
There's the
It,
second.
yeah, it stands for something. It stands for limited use, limited application.
Oh. Huh. I do not see the piece of the application that I'm looking for. The problem is they did not fill the actual variance document. They attached something. So where that should be on the form is blank. Oh, here it is. Okay. This is, it's like maybe page 4 under variance requests. It says Code Red on the right. It says Tufts on the other. Would it make sense, Adrian, if I shared this?
Well, I'd like you to read it, that little bit you were
I
gonna
will
read.
absolutely read it.
Yeah.
So the variance, they are requesting relief pertaining to elevators being required within multi-story buildings. The design team is proposing the use of a Lula lift to serve the building from the lower floor to the second floor. The lift will be accessed via a new accessible entrance located off the new patio for the building. The lift's overrun will be located at the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor, which is being designed as accessible, will not be provided with an accessible route. And that would be because the wheelchair isn't there. Actually, Brian, not having the elevator, would they still have an accessible route, meaning the hallways would be wide enough and the walkways?
Right. So that's when they say it's accessible, like everything else about that floor is accessible. The walkways are wide enough. The handrails are there. The they're the flooring and so forth is designed not to trip you. Like there is a lot of elements to accessibility that have to do with walking and how to walk without having a problem, even if you don't walk as well as a fully able-bodied person. So like there are pieces of the code that are beyond just working for people who are on wheeled devices.
So the installation of an elevator would result in an excessive cost without substantial benefit for the building occupants. The elevator serving the 4 floors would require a larger footprint, additional overrun space above the roof, and more substantial fire-rated construction. In addition, the maintenance for an elevator shaft will be more expensive over time than the Lula lift. And then it talks about the costs, the construction, as there are accessible sleeping rooms, bathing rooms, toilet rooms, and an accessible common space at the lower 3 floors, the cost of providing an elevator and extending its reach to the upper floor does not provide substantial benefit to occupants beyond the proposed conditions. So I disagree. I think that all of the floors should be accessible, that the elevator should go all the way up to that floor. And I don't believe this is triggered because of the construction amounts. And when that is triggered, it says you have to do everything. What they're trying to do is find an alternative, but they're not providing access to that top floor. So for that reason, I would not support this variance. But that's something we need to discuss together. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say?
It looks like Harriet and Frank have their hand up.
Go right ahead.
Well, I just feel that it's time for us to vote. I feel we've looked over the information as well as we can. And, granted, it's a cost overrun for them. But I personally, were I a student living there, and if I knew enough to know much about these things, we take elevators totally for granted. But the idea of the 2 things, the cost in construction is certainly mammoth, but the very fact that it's checked monthly in what's a public institution in a certain way, it's an educational institution, seems very wise way to do it, not to mention the fact that every student who lives in that dorm needs to have access to all 3 floors. Otherwise, it's discriminatory in my view. So that's how I think about it. Thank you.
And
So,
Anne wanted to say something?
yeah, in the chat.
Can you read the chat?
Is elevator used during a fire? If there's a fire on the 1st floor, how do people in wheelchairs get to the roof? Carried? ?
I believe there's supposed to be a protocol in place. I don't know. That's something we could certainly investigate, but regardless, if they're having this lift or go to the top floor or having a Lula that doesn't, the question of how people would get out and God forbid there was a fire wouldn't change. One thing I can say is that I have seen a device that goes on a wall. It's a manufactured item that you pull down and it makes almost like, not a parachute, but like a soft piece that you can slide the person onto, and 2 people could actually bring someone down the stairs safely. There are some alternatives that should be in place, and I'm sure that Tufts has a fire policy. Any other questions before we vote? What we're going to vote on is not supporting this variance. And that will allow me to write a letter that will say, as the chair of the commission, we have reviewed the variance request and we are not in support of a Lula lift as it excludes access to the top floor. So I'm going to motion that we vote to not support this request and to have the letter sent with the wording that I just said. For some reason, my Zoom screen has disappeared.
Well, I second the motion. This is Harriet.
Any other? Can you still see me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone opposed?
Opposed to.
Okay, let's go the other way. All those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Of
It-
what the proposal
wait,
is, the proposal is that we're not granting a variance from our point of view. Is that right?
We're not in favor of this request. We do not support this request for a variance for
Okay.
to use Lula lift. We don't technically, we don't deny or accept. We are allowed to provide an opinion, and it's very strongly reviewed by the Architectural Access Board.
I have one more question. I have one
Yes.
more question for Brian. Brian. Is there ever a time where something is impossible?
Um,
And that in some cases, like they're creating specific, something is better than nothing. You know, I mean, I understand everyone's point, but is there ever a point where they're like, this building is 150, whatever it is, 50
right.
years old,
This building's almost 200 years old.
and it's gonna cost us more money to, and I'm not saying right or wrong, and it's gonna,
Yeah.
we're gonna just knock it down. Like this, either we do this or we knock it down.
So I think,
Like structurally impossible or in whatever,
Yeah.
something
so,
structurally.
so,
impossible.
so yes, there are times when, so that's a hard question to ask, because on one hand, if you have enough money to throw at a problem, yes, you can do pretty much anything. There does become a point where the cost of doing the item is either more expensive than the value of the building or the perceived value of the building. There could be a point of time where it's cheaper to tear down the building and rebuild the building. I think here the risk is more, they just wouldn't do anything. They don't have to do the renovation. There's no legal requirement to renovate the building and continue to use it. It's a 200-year-old building who was last renovated prior to the ADA even existing. They have no legal requirement to renovate. So there could be a point where the owner of the building, and I'm saying this because we could have this with any owner of a building in the city. This is not just a Tufts thing.
Absolutely.
The owner of the building just conclude it's not worth the cost to renovate it. I mean, you're seeing where the cost to put in an elevator is almost half of the cost to do all the other renovations that they were going to do. I mean, that definitely starts getting to the point where it may not be worth the renovation to begin with. It's not like they
So with
lose the
that-
building.
And that becomes the owner's decision not to do any renovations, because if they do renovations at all, they have to make it fully accessible.
If they don't get the variance, correct.
And that's not good. And that's not good. for-
I mean, that's a value judgment.
It's a loss. It could be a loss.
It could be perceived as a loss because you would continue with a building that's 100% inaccessible, as opposed to 3/4 accessible and 1/4 inaccessible to people in wheelchairs. Yeah, that could be an outcome.
We had a variance request on Broadway, and it was about a slope between the sidewalk and getting in the building. And what the amount of work that it would require to lower the slope, and I'm not going to get the numbers right. I'm just totally throwing something out there. Let's say it was supposed to be 2% and they were saying 6, and they got down to 4 because they found a different way to make it lower without ripping out the entire basement. But what they also agreed to do was to put in a device so that the door would open automatically, because if you were in a wheelchair using a walker, any device, and you go to pull that door open and you're on a very high slope, that pitch would make it unsafe. So that was, we got to the middle on that one. It was safe. They raised up another piece so the slope wasn't as hard. And I actually drive by that place frequently, and the outdoor button to open up the door automatically is already there. So that was one piece where they knew they needed to do it, but finding the right way without gutting the entire building, like huge structural changes, to be able to change that 2%.
Yeah.
So
I would argue, based on what they're describing here, the structural changes that a full elevator would require is comparable.
I'm confused. Can you say
So,
that?
sure. So you were referring to the structural challenges, arguably technical infeasibility of doing the slope at the building in Ball Square on Broadway because of the foundation requirements and the structural. If we're not there, we're pretty close to a similar condition at this Tufts building, because elevators require an overrun associated with them, where it continue that you have to have a hoist room to hoist up the elevator. I mean, the elevator is like a little crane, so you have to have a room for the crane to sit that picks up and drops the elevator. Above the 3rd floor, there's no attic for this elevator control room to live. You would have to completely reconstruct the roof to push this elevator control room and have a space up there to operate it with all the access, all the physical access requiring to get there. So I can totally get that this could be technically infeasible, especially on an historic structure.
This is Deborah. I'm looking at the variance here, and it says the original year of construction is 1930.
I thought I had read that it was built in 1880 something, but I could be wrong.
My house is older than that house by 20 years.
I could be wrong. Maybe it's not 200 years old. No,
It is a beautiful.
What I have here, Bellew Hall was built in 1852.
I have a,
I'm
I
looking
we
at
need-
page 3.
Yeah.
It says what the original year of construction for the building facility in 1930.
Frank, you had something to
I
say?
have a question.
Sure.
Holly. So, so this whole issue of having the crane room or the overrun, what if it were possible to build that crane room above the existing roof so that the Lula lift could access all 4 floors? Would that then provide the social equality of access that we were very concerned about?
So the Lula specs explicitly say that the maximum height is 25 feet, which I think means that it can't cover the whole height of this building.
Oh.
Okay.
Thanks, Joel. So that's why. So Lula is being used in lieu of a traditional elevator because it has lower cost of maintenance. I'm not going to say it's less expensive because I don't know that. But the issue is that it can't go beyond the height to hit that floor as well as have that piece above. Is that correct, Joel?
Well, I think that I guess I'm confused because, like, is there a total of 4 floors on this building or 3? Are we counting the, like, is there a ground floor and then the floor above it is the first and then the floor above that is the second and then the floor above that is the third, or what?
They talk
Correct.
about a ground level. I think that there's, I don't want to call it a basement, but
They call it lower level, I believe. And yes, there are 4 total floors.
Okay, so I mean, I don't know exactly what the implications of this 25 feet are, but I assume that that probably means that, you know, a Lula elevator simply cannot get from the bottom of this to the top, at least with a single elevator. Now, maybe you could have one Lula elevator to cover, you know, part of that vertical travel and then another Lula elevator elsewhere in the building for the upper floors, and you might have to change elevators at some middle floor, but I mean, if you're going to do that, it's going to take up even more horizontal space on the middle floors, and you know, now you're paying for 2 elevators, which eats into the cost savings of you know, not just using a more traditional elevator. I guess the other question I have is, you know, there's all this speculation we're having about, well, maybe Tufts might not do the renovation. I mean, can we get them to make a statement on that?
well,
We actually don't, all we have to make the decision on is what's in front of us.
and again, we're not voting. We're not part of the MAAB. We, as the local disability commission, are sent these plans as well as inspectional services within the city.
Mhm.
And in this case, the Boston Center for Independent Living, who is the Massachusetts board that governs, I'm not going to say it correctly, but BCIL as a resource that responds to variance requests. And the body that votes at the MAAB makes those decisions if they will accept or decline them. So we have the pleasure of receiving this information, and we are allowed to write a letter in support of or not in favor of. That gets included as part of their decision. So we're not, we're providing input. That doesn't mean we can't reach out to Tufts and ask questions, but a lot of times what happens is variances come in and the timing in which our monthly meetings happen, and sometimes the hearings get queued up beforehand. So, and Tufts historically has been behind in providing bedrooms and accessible access to not just housing. I've read some stories about some other concerns, and they have been making some updates, and they have reached out. They'd like to share what they've done throughout the university with us. But right now, the only thing that we're focusing on is this specific request. So unless anyone has any other.
So I guess one other comment I have about this request is that they were talking about, you know, somewhere in the 40 pages about having, you know, 5% of rooms accessible. And my understanding is that something like 20% of Americans have disabilities. And so I'm a little confused about, you know, why this 5% is being cited as a potentially reasonable threshold.
From what I understand, Joel, is that is probably the building law of that 5%, or that's a piece of the ADA. I'm not questioning that 5%. I agree. There's definitely more than 5% of people who have disabilities. I mean, those are my own opinions. I don't think 5% is enough, but I do believe that's a regulation. Brian, you gave me the.
I've been looking through the ADA access board alterations and additions chapter, and it does point out the point of disproportionality. And I haven't read this through fully, but it seems that the ADA sets a threshold of about 20%, that something about 20% of the total renovation costs. If to bring it up to full accessibility, you have to go beyond 20% of the total renovation costs. That's becomes disproportionate. But I don't quite understand it. Yeah. So compliance is required. Compliance is required up to the point the 20% cost cap is reached, even where it does not result in a fully accessible path of travel. Where costs exceed this cap, compliance should be prioritized in this order: accessible entrance, accessible route to primary function areas, restroom access, accessible telephone. That's a little idiosyncratic these days. Accessible drinking fountain, and other elements such as parking and storage.
You could argue drinking fountain as well, but they still have a certain height. No, the high school, the brand new high school has drinking fountains. They are appropriately high, and the bottom, they're not obstructed. I don't think I'd be happy if my daughter was using a water fountain, but they are there.
So there may be a 20% argument that 40% is well beyond the 20%, and they can't, and the MAB may not be able to compel them to do that.
I did
Holly,
read. Please go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure, and I did have to step away for a second, that Anne's comment in the chat about the social side of things was read. She wrote that on the social side, if this were to go through, students would have to come down to the first 2 floors to be social, inclusive with their peers, which 3 floors. So
3 floors are accessible of a 4-story building.
okay. Where is the common space? Remind me.
Hold on. I'm confident it is not on the top floor.
Yeah, that.
Ground level, first, second, third.
So it appears that the lounge is on the ground floor, which has the shared kitchen and laundry. And then the first floor already starts with dorm rooms. And so the first, second, and third floor are all dorm rooms.
Okay.
And the third floor, the 4th actual level in the building, the 3rd floor is the one that's not accessible by the Lula.
But no matter which floor a student lives on, they have to go all the way to the ground floor to access laundry, kitchen. And
the common social spaces, yes.
okay. Well, still an overarching inclusive issue across the board.
Which is what?
Well, if a student who has a disability is on the 1st floor and doesn't have an issue getting down to the ground floor, that's one thing. But if they want to interact with their peers on other floors, you don't necessarily, social time isn't reserved for a common area in college. We all.
Yes.
I mean, when I went to college, we had this weird rule: as long as you weren't studying or busy, you were supposed to keep your door open to sort of maintain a level of community and engagement. Yeah, it was weird.
Did that happen?
Yeah, but it got clicky pretty quickly because you just met your friends on the hall and you understand what I'm saying? Like, you didn't go to the other side of the hall. Like, that's not, it didn't work.
You didn't just walk into someone else's room like, hey, this is supposed to be open door. What's up? What's
It
up?
was just, yeah, sorry, we're digressing. It was super.
No,
weird.
that's
I was
okay.
like, what?
We need some levity. Okay, so I'd like to motion that I draft a letter on behalf of the commission that we are not in favor of the Lula lift, that we do not support the Lula lift. I will include in it all of the notes and reasons, specifically what Deborah and others talked about, it not being of the social aspect. And do I have a
Can
second?
you put something
Yeah.
in, like, if you're not gonna do it, if you choose not to, we'll take it.
If you're what?
If you're gonna say this is unfeasible, not feasible, okay, well, it's okay.
So don't do it.
No, Katie, you have to,
Yeah, I
yeah,
figured.
either have to
Brian.
support
I was
it or
just
not
like,
support it.
you
And-
can't do ranked choice here,
Yeah,
like one,
no.
no, two.
And yeah,
Yes
and
and
Holly,
no.
yeah, and Holly, you already moved. You've already made this motion.
Okay,
and,
so I've motioned.
and
Who's my-
Harriet and-
Harriet is
and-
my second. Okay.
Yeah, and
All
Harriet was
those
your
in
second.
favor?
Yeah.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Brian, are you?
I'm
oh,
opposed.
You're opposed. Okay,
I'm
so
going to abstain.
and you can abstain.
Okay.
That's fine.
So,
Actually, I'm gonna oppose with Brian. I'm gonna oppose.
okay, I
So
didn't
you-
get, I
so
didn't
you-
get a vote from Pauline or Harriet.
But I need clarity. A vote of yes.
We need
is-
clarity.
Yeah, so a vote of yes means that we do not support this variance and that we will send a letter. A vote of no means that you don't agree with that. And abstaining clearly is that you're not going to vote either way. So we have,
I'm going
we
to
have-
abstain.
okay, we have an abstain and we have one, Brian is not in favor of our response to this variance. Do we have votes from Harriet, Deborah, and Pauline?
This is Deborah. I vote aye.
Thank you.
I vote aye.
Thank you. Ms. Harriet. Harriet,
You're on mute if you're trying to speak.
Okay.
There you go.
Aye.
Okay, that's what I expected.
okay, so we have one no, one abstain, and the rest are yeses, so. the motion
Passes.
passes.
Passes
Okay.
easily.
All right,
I
thank
would
you,
like,
everyone.
good discussion, everybody. Very thorough, very thoughtful. Thank you.
Thank you,
I
Harriet.
learned something. I appreciated it also.
We all learn something
I
every
agree.
time, don't we?
Yeah,
That's the best part of this. Okay.
Next
So,
we vote. Oh, yes, the vote of conduct. Let's do the code of conduct.
yes, Adrian, were you able to find the language and would you mind putting it into the chat? So,
Yeah, I sent it to you directly, but I'll send it to everybody else. And
And
again, this is just what we articulated. Of course, you all can wordsmith it another way if you feel compelled.
You want to read it when it's up?
Oh, yeah, I can certainly read it. The Somerville Commission for Persons with Disabilities adopts and abides by the city's code of conduct for board, commission, and committee members.
Yeah, that says it. And that, the thing, Harriet, I would add to this, and I'm not sure you were at the meeting, but before, but the point is that whatever the city ordinances are, we as a commission are in accord with those ordinances. So it's an ordinance. Is that right, people? Did I get that right?
Adrian, it's an ordinance, correct?
We lost her. Where is she?
Nope, I'm right here.
She's thinking. I'll give her
Right.
time.
I don't know if I can answer that question.
I
Okay,
don't believe it is an ordinance.
I don't think it's an ordinance. no.
I don't think the council ever ordained it. And,
so
and I think it's purely an administrative,
Yeah,
a requirement of the administration.
that's the best way to put that, a requirement of the administration, yes.
okay. So I'm going to motion again that we adopt
come
the code of conduct. The language is as follows. The Somerville Commission for Persons with Disabilities adopts and abides by the city's code of conduct for board commissions and committee members. And then I'll probably add, and then we'll attach it as an addendum, the actual code of conduct. Just need to figure out.
Adrian, do you know if there's an official date for this code of conduct?
Official date, like,
Like most of the time, a policy or something has a date stamped on it of when it was enacted. And the reason why I'm asking is were somebody to change it 5 years from now, if it didn't have a date, would we still be, would we still by our bylaw have to follow it or not? It's not very clear. That's not very clear.
that's a great question. I don't think there's a specific date on it. The guidance that staff liaisons were given, where there were trainings that some members did attend, as you know, and then they had till technically yesterday to sign it, but there's a little bit more time there because there's a lot of other stuff going on. And then commissions were to adopt it. But that's a great question because it was created, it was drafted,
May I suggest that we amend this to say the code of conduct board and commissions as established in 2023?
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's fine.
Just
But
so that
that's good. I think that's good feedback for the folks that created this, that there's not a date.
So the Commission on Disabilities adopts the code of conduct as of 2023.
To be more specific and say as existing, as extant June 13th, 2023.
Frank, you're fantastic.
I mean, that's fine.
Let's
for me.
memorialize it.
Yeah,
Okay, Frank.
and also today is my mother's 80th birthday, so what a great day to remember that. So I don't get a vote on this commission, but I would vote for that. Hands down.
Frank, what was that word? Extent?
I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's an academics and science word and all that stuff.
Sure stuff. Come on, Harriet. Caught yourself there.
Okay. I have,
Okay, so we're voting. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. We have accepted that. I will add it. I will make sure that you get the latest copy, Adrian, and then we'll have it embossed and sent out to everyone.
And what about the baseball games?
Baseball games? Oh, yes. Okay, so I know
I
you
gotta
need
go, guys. I'm
to go,
sorry.
Kate.
Okay.
Are we done
I think
thanks,
voting?
Katie.
we still have quorum, so thank you
Okay.
We
very
do.
much for being here tonight. So we need to vote to allocate an amount of money, a maximum amount to go towards tickets and if necessary, a bus. And what we need to do is have a cap on this because this can't be a broad open thing. We need to say the commission has voted to allocate X dollars towards this this event for the community. And then the process will involve Are there tickets? How many tickets? Well, do we need a bus? Do we not need a bus? How many
And if
people
there's a
can
good-
join? But it again, and also it sits if there is a process in which the municipality can take our funds and appropriately pay the Red Sox for these tickets. So there's a lot of bouncing around here. But what I'm asking for us to discuss now is if we could allocate an amount of money for this, and then if it doesn't get used or it doesn't happen, because we can't just say, oh yeah, let's get 20 tickets. We have to have an exact amount that we've voted on to use towards this.
And if
That's
there's a bus, is it gonna be a bus that has 4 wheelchair spaces, or what was your thoughts about how many wheelchair users might end up on that bus?
If we have wheelchair users, we will absolutely make sure we can accommodate them.
Okay, I'm just curious because you were talking about, 4 accessible seats at the event, and, my understanding is that an awful lot of buses probably don't have that many spaces on a single bus.
My daughter was in a wheelchair, and it is difficult to use many buses, but you're reminding me of a very good point that we would need to make sure that everyone could get there together or in a similar way. And I hope that we get to do this, and I hope that we have enough seats for as many people who need accessibility can join us. But I promise you this, Joel, I will make sure that everyone can get there together. But again, it's not, I don't have enough data at this point, and with the time constraints of we have to vote on it today, or we can't vote on it again until the second week in July, which may be.
Okay. And I
We
guess
have
another
this-
thing that might be interesting to find out is, I was on a relatively new MBTA bus recently, and the left side had probably 5 or 6 or 7 fold down side facing seats on the left side, and the right side had, several more, and so it looked like you probably could get at least 3 wheelchairs and maybe more on one of those buses. The T normally doesn't do charters, but the rule prohibiting them from doing charters basically is that, if there's a private company that can accommodate the trip, the T is not allowed to bid on it. But this might be a case where it might actually be worth asking, if no private company has a suitable bus, if maybe the T could do a charter, assuming
Okay.
that, the T turned out to have enough seats in one bus.
Joel, I'm not sure how much information you'd like to share, or if you're providing information rather than, wanting for me to reach out to you for that. If you would like to share some more of this or suggestions, I'd be happy to, through Adrian, have that conversation, but I certainly do not want to put you on the spot in any way.
I think that's all I want to say on the particular subject of bus seating, and I personally am not particularly interested in going to this event, nor would I need a wheelchair space if I was going. So I think that's about all I have to say on the subject of the number of wheelchair spaces on a bus for this.
Well, I appreciate that. I will make sure that happens. So,
I'm sorry, Holly, through the chair. Anne has her hand up.
oh, and I couldn't see that. Please go ahead, Anne.
Sorry, I could have put it in chat. Do you guys have access to door to door? Are you able to use door to door from the city?
I think that what we need to first establish here is that what the amount is if we're willing to use our funds. And then absolutely the next steps have to happen pretty quickly. How many tickets? How do we get people there who may need accessible transportation? And also, how do we coordinate with the city how to pay for these tickets? So I'm asking for us to vote on a dollar amount. And then from there, there'll be full transparency on what happens with the commission on this project.
How much money do we have to play with?
We have a very large budget, but I think we need to be responsible in how we use these funds. Tickets are about $50 that I've seen. They start around $50.
Sometimes more.
Yeah, and again, not knowing where the seats may be and what options there are, I think I would say if they were $50, and then the bus 75, 20. I would say at least $2,000 or $3,000 when you
Could I
get done.
say five? Could I say five?
You certainly can say 5.
I can add something.
Yeah.
Hey, Holly, and everybody, this is Harriet, and I think it'd be interesting. I wish, Anne, you could give us more data, but if we say $50 a ticket and $1,000 for the bus or whatever it is, I think that's great, but it'd be very interesting also to look into whether would we accept tickets that are cheaper because that they're willing to give us cheaper tickets because this is this event.
I think that's a fine thing to discuss. I think the biggest question is, do they have availability? There's no way of knowing if there are any group tickets. And I did not get an answer back today. Actually, I'm going to double check that. So I'd like to motion that we allocate $5,000 of our funds towards a baseball ticket event, with the understanding that that would be the cap on this event, and that it would be covering tickets to the game and transportation. And the goal would be to not just to include the community. This isn't a Somerville Commission event, although that would be very nice. That's not what our funds are for. We are here to support the broader community. And that's what my very long motion is.
Okay, I second it.
Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Brian, are you in favor?
No.
No. Okay. Anyone else opposed? Okay, so the motion passes. So we will, Adrian and I will,
Holly,
yes.
I'm sorry. Can you remind me of the amount? Because that will have to go in my communication that I will copy you on to double check with Ed Bean about the feasibility of all this.
Sure. We said the maximum would be $5,000, but it
Okay.
would be 2 separate payments because I know the physical amount processing changes. So, and again, if this is, this still has a lot of steps before we can find out if we can do this, and I will be providing full transparency and updates to the commission. And definitely by the second week in July, we will have an update. Brian, you have your hands raised?
I would, if this fails for whatever reason through,
Sure.
I do strongly support the idea in concept.
Sure.
And what may be an acceptable alternative that might even be more accessible to the Somerville community is trying to use our funds to rent out an establishment in the city that would be ADA accessible, that could potentially support 100 or more people, and put the game up on televisions throughout the facility and have a social event in that respect. No? Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm
2
just
separate opinions.
providing
I
I'm just
respect both of them,
providing a
but
suggestion.
there might be some middle ground there. I'm forgive me, Pauline. I think are you saying no because you're in favor of the event at the park?
I think it's something that should be done so that people could have the opportunity to go.
And
I can't. I guess it's me, but having an event in a place where you've got the TV or whatever you're watching the game on, and
it's not the same as
for a
being
blind person, I mean,
blind.
I've been to a lot of ball games, okay? for a blind person to sit and watch a TV. You don't get the full flavor of the game.
Understood. But
Pauline,
I
that makes perfect sense. I totally get where you're coming from.
And
I was
the other
responding to
thing
the
too,
social aspect of it. Yes.
yeah, but the other thing too, not only you don't get the full flavor of the game, but the atmosphere of that ballpark is just special.
I agree completely with what you're saying. And I also support what Brian is saying because he's talking about a way, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, a way to be together in an accessible place and celebrate the ADA, and possibly the game would be on a TV. But I think there's probably three things here. There could be an event in a place that has without a game going on, that has other activities, but there could also be a general event that we have to celebrate the ADA. So there are other opportunities and other things that we could do. And I think that, Brian, what you brought up, as well as your comments, Pauline, are very valuable. And I do think we should do more for that day. So we voted, we accepted the motion, it passed. It is 8:37. Okay. So I'm gonna bounce around some more to the same thread of celebrating the ADA. I was reading my favorite Somerville newspaper, and I was also looking at the budget that was approved. I saw a line item about the, I'm gonna say it wrong, the public garden. People go and they plant, and come on, Brian, give me the words. We have a Somerville garden that the
Community.
public,
Community gardens?
community garden, thank you.
Okay.
I haven't slept in, I can't even tell you how long. So the community garden, it's a wonderful thing. I remember going there when my daughter was younger, helping her friend and their mom on their area in which they planted things. And I noticed that the community gardens budget is $2,500. And that budget is maintenance and upkeep. And I'm sure that all of it is used. One thing I've always noticed is the gardens aren't accessible. They need to have raised beds. They need to have wider areas. And I thought that talking about putting funding towards an accessible community garden was something I wanted to discuss. I'm not asking us to vote for a certain amount. I'm just bringing up as an idea of things that we should think about and see if people have interest. I mean, it's kind of late for growing. I still don't have tomatoes. My lettuce garden is amazing, but I don't think we'd be able to jump into the area, construct big beds, or find a place. But I think I'd like to have a conversation about an accessible garden. If anyone has any comments.
Where is this community garden, by the way?
I know of one, but are there two, Brian?
There's like 6 or 7 of them. There's
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah, there's
A
a,
lot.
the way the city, as far as I understand it, and for those who can access it, there's a link in the chat, but people can apply for a plot, to manage a plot, to garden a plot, harvest a plot, whatever. And so Brian is correct. There's 6 or 7 that are quite active in various, I think, locations across the city.
Thank you
Love it.
so much for that
Oh.
link, Adrian.
Yeah.
Now, it does say there are 4 accessible beds.
Where are those?
Well, it says Lincoln Park opened in 2018 with 20 plots, including 4 raised beds and 4 accessible beds.
We should look at that, Holly. Oh my. I would like to say that there's a bunch along the community bike path
Mhm.
from the Square bus station
Yes.
toward Willow Ave. And there's some funny stuff I don't really understand.
What do you mean funny stuff?
Who gets-
Unusual plantings?
No.
No, there's art, we can call it art. Let's call it art.
No, that wasn't what I was talking about, but you're right. There's great art projects. But what I wanted to say was, let's surmise that there are 10 lots in that section that I'm talking about between the bus station and the private housing. I don't understand, like my neighbor several years ago, maybe 10 years ago, said, oh yeah, I have a garden plot over there. And I couldn't understand because I had heard other people say, oh, I would love to garden, but all the garden plots are taken up. So that's why it'd be interesting to find out, A, how long they get assigned for, or, what that's about. And I do remember that it was at a very minimal cost, like $25, I think, a year or something. Do you know how that is, Brian? Do you know all about that?
That sounds relatively familiar, Harriet. We used to have one many years ago. It is set up where there is, and the best thing to do is just to reach out to Public Space and Urban Forestry, who manages the garden plots. And
That's my segue.
Go for it.
Subcommittees.
Yes.
We need people to jump on and form a few subcommittees for topics like community garden, for topics like, I don't mean to call you out, Deborah, but education within the city. I know one thing that I was very impressed by when we first met you and in talking with you more was your connections to special education and within the city. And I thought that if we were to have a subcommittee focused on education concerns, maybe you could be a part of that. And I would love to see someone who may have interest in things like the community garden or other events. But I just wanted to throw out the idea that I saw the garden, I connected to it. I did no further research. It's nice to hear from all of you the information that you have. But I think that the only way that we really get things moving beyond 2 hours on a Tuesday and me bombarding you with a lot of emails of materials is if we break into smaller groups, kind of like we handled the scholarship program. So I don't think we really have to vote to create a commission, a subcommittee. Is there anyone who would like to volunteer? Oh, Harriet, Frank, I have to see a hand.
I just wanted to comment the following. One of the things that has come up, and since we have Anne and Joel, if you're still here, is one of the things that we need on the commission is people who might be willing to be what's called an associate commissioner. And those are people who don't have term requirements and are not able to vote, but they can bring a lot of information and important stuff to the commission. So for example, let's say I wanted to start a subcommittee and I had two or maybe three people who were also deeply interested, maybe another commissioner or maybe one or two people wouldn't mind being associate commissioners. So in my view, it's like a way of extending and expanding the commission's usefulness for things in the city. That's all I'd like to say.
So Harriet, would you like to join another subcommittee?
How many am I on right now, Holly?
Any other members that have any feedback or comments of creating a subcommittee or participating in one or something we could focus on by using the efforts of a subcommittee? And again, Harriet, you brought up a really good point is that through, we have commissioners, but we also have commissioners who do not vote. But all the other important work that we do and all the important conversations that we have and all of our lives that we get to share of things that are interest or that as a community, how we're all very unique and different is the most
What
important.
about,
Do.
excuse me, sorry about that. What
No,
about
don't
a
apologize.
subcommittee? What about a subcommittee to reach out to public, I'm not going to use the right words, people like
That's
police
okay.
and fire, to educate them about folks with disabilities, because there have been instances where people with disabilities have had trouble with communicating with police or firemen, and I'd like to see some kind of training or whatever to educate these folks, you know, and so that, number one, they won't be afraid of people with disabilities. That's the biggest thing.
I think
Right.
They're
that's a
scared to
good
death.
idea.
They're scared to death.
It sounds like you just created a subcommittee,
Yeah.
Pauline.
Yeah, thanks, Pauline.
Yeah, I don't. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted, and I'm sorry if I didn't report this out earlier in the year. I did do an initial training with the fire department in the fall and then with the police department earlier this spring. And they are definitely interested in more. I also know that something that maybe this commission could possibly replicate is that one of the arms of one of the smaller organizations of the Arc of Massachusetts, I don't know which smaller city in Massachusetts does it, but they work directly with, I think, either the police or fire department and the Best Buddies program to do some intentional interactions with folks who have disabilities, sort of a mutual opportunity, kind of field trip, if you will, you know, having folks come to the fire station and learn about what goes on there and
Yeah.
sort of vice versa. So I think there's definitely
Well,
room for that in this community.
I did a training session with Elder Service, Somerville, Cambridge, Elder Services before COVID. It was a wonderful day. It wasn't long enough, really, but they had about an hour and a half allotted for this session, and I went and talked to them about how to interact with a blind person, because it's amazing how many people don't know, and you get all kinds of, oh my goodness, you can't see, that's too bad. Well, don't feel sorry for us, you know, because we don't want that. We want I need a word. Somebody help me with a word.
We just want a sense of people paying attention to us as another human being, and also
Yeah.
also giving them permission. Like one of the things that I've said in schools and various other, you know,
Right.
these is, you know, ask me what assistance I need, please. You know,
Yeah.
because
And
a lot of times they're uncomfortable. You know, public service people are uncomfortable, and the public in general, because they're like deer in the headlights and they really do not have an idea. And so, especially where safety is concerned, one of the things that happens with blind, visually impaired people is people will just grab you and haul you off this
Yeah.
way. And
Yep.
that's probably uncomfortable, if not distressing. So that's just one area, but the whole idea is to remind people or give them some insight into just another human being with one aspect that's very different. You know, it doesn't mean
we're not aliens from outer space. Thank you very much.
that. I don't know.
We're
At least not because of having a disability.
right.
Holly.
That one
Right.
has nothing to do with the other. Okay.
Right.
We have 9 minutes and 32 seconds. So
What we need to do, we got this at least seeded, right? We have a seed here.
we have some seeds, tall seeds and tall raised bins. So sort of trailing along, we discussed the need to have more focused subcommittees to work on things outside of our monthly meetings, but then come back and report to the commission so that we can always have things moving forward. And I wrote down a focus on education, on training with the police and fire. We're going to need a group for applicants for future seats. So we're gonna put those in the minutes. And I will send out sort of blind copy everyone with the list of subcommittees. And I'll just ask you to reply back if you have interest in any of them. And if you have thoughts about an additional subcommittee, just so we can finish in the next 7 minutes and 32 seconds. So I don't want to force anyone to jump onto a subcommittee. I would rather that you reply back and could see what people's interest is. Does that sound good? Silence is virtue. Okay.
I agree. I think the proposals sound very good. And
Okay.
I'll probably get on more subcommittees, I'm sure, anyway.
And one thing that Harriet approached was the fact that having associate commissioners is very helpful. And clearly, Anne, you've been in our shoes before and you seem very vested. I don't know if you know about what associate commissioners are, but I think all of us have opportunities to talk about the commission with other residents, to share what we do, to talk about the fact that we have public meetings, that there's a way through the city, through Adrian and through others, to ask questions or to make suggestions. And we welcome all feedback from everyone. But what we really need to do is to fill the seats that we have open and to encourage more people to come and be an associate commissioner and within those subcommittees work on specific tasks.
Holly, I'm sorry, it looks like Anne noted in the chat she has a specific question about.
Oh, sure.
When you're ready.
Thank you. I can't check chat and talk.
Okay.
No, you can do it at the end where it says public. I just didn't know if you're going to do public comment because you're short of time.
I'm going to ask one more thing and then you have the floor. Does that sound good? Okay. I had one other change I'd like to propose to our bylaws. We have a membership of 9, and I don't know when the exact date, but the membership can be a maximum of 13 seats. And I'd like to propose that we change the bylaws to allow there to be 13 members in the commission. That in no way changes the voting, because we are still a simple majority, which is of the total seats that we have filled, we must have 50% plus 1 present to have a meeting or a quorum to deliberate and to vote. But what it would do is allow us the opportunity to have a broader group of people with different experiences, different interests, and it could strengthen what we're doing. At the same time, as the chairperson, I see 17 blocks in front of me and lots of great opportunity, but it may make meetings a little bit different, but I feel strongly, Brian, you see that face, trying to allow everyone to have opportunity and to take everyone's feedback. So I know I can pivot. I know we can make that work. Other communities have 13 seats on their commissions. So that's what I am proposing.
If I may, Chair, my puzzled face is because I think our bylaws already say that we have 13 seats.
I don't think that they do, but if they do, we don't need to vote on it.
How smart is that? My.
You magically took care of what you did what I asked for. It's already there.
Oh, wait,
Yeah, I think it says 9.
no, it does say 9, but the copy, so, and the only reason why I bring this up is because the copy that that we spent a pretty long time a couple months ago, I believe you were absent, Holly, on the draft bylaws said 13.
It was one of the items that
It
we
was
had
one of,
there
oh,
that
okay.
we never voted
And I
on.
don't think we ever noticed that it was a proposal. We thought that it was just part of the copy of it. Okay.
No,
All right.
so we've had to make sure that bylaws, like all of other documents, are screen readable, are
Yeah.
able to be
No,
embossed.
No, that
No,
makes
and-
sense. Yeah, that's why I
and-
missed it.
No
Uh,
worries. So it's the same question. I'd like to make a motion that we amend the bylaws, that we have 13 seats. Everything else will remain the same. There are specific seats called out. One must be someone appointed by the mayor, another is the parent
Family
of a
member.
person.
Yeah.
And then the majority of members shall be people who have disabilities.
This
So,
is here in the
yes.
motion. I second the motion.
You second the motion. Any other questions or comments? Great. All those in favor say aye.
I,
Aye. Anyone opposed?
I am abstaining for lack of ability to get my head around it in less than 2 minutes.
I understand. Okay, then, the motion passes. And Brian, as always, if you would like to discuss this as a group or individually, or if there's anything that you want to ask questions, I don't want to make it so that you can't speak.
Okay.
Because I value everyone's feedback and insights. So, Anne, you have 2 minutes and 26 seconds.
Thank you. So I came here to ask questions about the partial pavement of streets. Do you know about this?
We have lots of sidewalks within the city. Do you have a specific question?
Partial pavement is that they're going to only pave the center of the street. They're not going to pave the sides. So I wanted to know if you knew about this and if you thought it would be unsafe, like it would be a bump down. So for wheelchairs and people with physical challenges and I mean, I think of everybody, people with strollers and pedestrian, people, seniors, but mostly people with, physical challenges. But if you don't know anything about the partial pavement, you don't know about it?
Yeah, and I believe you left me a message and I did call you back.
I did.
Yeah.
You did call me back. You left. I was looking for Holly only because they told me that Holly was who to talk to.
We work
But
together.
anybody.
Yeah,
That's okay.
so,
We
Yeah,
work
yeah, no,
together.
yeah, just to clarify, so I'm the ADA coordinator. I'm also the staff liaison for this commission. Holly is the fearless chair of this body. And then the mayor's appointee to this commission is our director of engineering, Brian Postlethwaite, who is also my colleague. So I don't currently have information about that. I don't know if Brian does. If we don't, we certainly can find out.
what do
Yeah, I
they
would
call that,
appreciate
what
that
you just
because-
said?
Partial
What is it?
pavement. Is that what you're saying,
Called
Anne?
partial pavement, yes, they're not going to pave the sides of the street. They're just gonna do it down the middle. So there will be like a bump,
Oh, goody.
on the hard top.
Anne, is this
So
is this specific to a certain road, or is this a new
all
method?
roads,
So
all roads. They're doing this to save money. Go ahead.
Well, let's let, Brian is definitely the best resource for this.
So for the chair and the commission and guests, I can give a very short description. I know that we're out of time in this, but I can give a really short description of what partial paving
I'm
is.
fine with staying
We
longer.
can talk.
Yeah.
You know, out of the meeting if you want.
Yeah. So
Okay.
the simple thing is partial paving is the intent to pave just the traveled way and not the parking lanes of local streets. This is not all streets. This is just local streets where we are, as a community, have not invested in the paving of our streets. And we are trying to get to a point where more of our streets are well maintained more quickly. A method to do that is just part paving the traveled way of the streets. It includes roughly we pave out to beyond where the parked cars are by about a foot. The paving is first, we mill out 2 to 3 inches of paving, and then we put in 2 to 3 inches of paving so that that joint between the new pavement and the existing pavement is as flush as it can be. And since it overlaps, it's just a wee bit bigger than the travel lane, so that when a car parks there and you step out on either side, you either step out onto the sidewalk on one side, or you step out onto the new pavement on the other side. The piece that is not paved is the piece that's underneath the parked cars. That's the goal and that's the intent. And the intent is so that we can catch up with the amount of paving that we need to do in the city as quickly as possible.
And what about, what do you call it? To get up and down on the sidewalks. What's the word? I'm tired too today.
You mean ramps, Ann? Do you mean ramps?
Yeah, ramps. Thank you, thank you. What about the ramps? Is there gonna be a bump there?
Curb cuts and such.
I mean, the curb cuts, the curb cuts aren't changing, the crosswalks aren't changing, they will all still be there. And where we remove the paint for the crosswalks, we'll be repainting them.
How does this work with bike lanes? And I'm still not able to visualize.
I think it's terrible. Yeah, I think it's gonna be really terrible. Yeah.
The vast
maybe-
majority of these streets, if not all of them, to date, we have not done this on any street with a bike lane on it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I still think I need you to draw on a
Yeah.
chalkboard so I can visualize
Yeah.
how that.
Yeah.
I'm happy to give a longer presentation of this next month. I mean, but I don't
Well, I mean,
have.
we all know, I'm on the Union Square Neighborhood Council. We all know we have a lot of money now from development taxes. There's no reason to do this, but, you know, I just worry about people with physical challenges. Okay. I was a nurse for years. I'm not, you know, and worked with kids with muscular dystrophy and everything in pools and everything. So I really care about
Well, thank you for doing that.
I hope you'd be considered, and you would consider joining us as an associate commissioner. You'd be an asset.
I think about it, but believe me, the Union Square Neighborhood Council, when I quit that, then I'll.
Oh, you can
Just
drop in,
along.
okay? Whenever you want to drop in.
Yes, I will. Yes, yes, yes.
You could also invite us
Thank
to
you.
one of your meetings. We could listen
Yes.
in if you'd like. I think collaboration across
First
groups within
and
the
third
city.
Monday every month. First and third Mondays of every month.
You meet twice a month?
It's necessary.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
necessary.
I'm sorry
No
to hold
sense.
everyone up. I have one personal comment. Technically, the commission by law must meet 10 meetings per year. I'm gonna do 12, don't really cancel any out. However, July 4th would be our next meeting, which I do not believe we should be having a meeting on July 4th. I am open to see if people would like to have it a different Tuesday, but at the same time,
I
Uh,
thought it was the second
Holly,
Tuesday
I'm
of the month.
sorry, the date is July 11th for the meeting.
11th.
Okay. Okay, so let me start over. July isn't the issue. Oh my God, no, but there's something with July. Can you imagine if this meeting was longer?
Well, the ADA turns 33 in July. We know that.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, so forget everything I just said about July. The meeting on August 8th. Do I have that correct?
Yes. We do have.
Yeah.
I will not be here.
Okay.
I'm having some medical treatments and I will be out for a little while, and they start the day before that. So we can certainly keep the August meeting on the books. We have a vice chair who can run that. And I certainly,
Just a moment, Holly. Let me double check the dates when my children return to Hungary and Canada.
so
August 11th.
what I can do is, it's something we need to vote on. It's something I just want to communicate to the group. And I will figure out if we have someone to cover the August meeting. And since the next Tuesday is not July 4th next month, we will be all set on July 11th to meet again.
Holly, I did forget in my report, speaking of next month.
No, not
Kate-
yet. Why?
Sorry. Kate and Adam, or maybe somebody else from Mobility would like some space on the July agenda to give an update on the Western Washington Street project.
I think that would be great if you and I can speak with them as soon as possible, just so we can take a look at slides and make sure that that everything is screen readable, that it can be embossed, that
Yeah.
all of the things that make it just what we need for our group would be great.
That's where I live.
And I can also make sure that they have enough time.
Yeah, I think they need about 15-20 minutes, but I'll check that communication.
Okay. So I think we're gonna adjourn. Was there anything that someone wanted to talk about that I missed, or any other comments? Like to thank-
I just
Cass-
like to thank both Joel and Ann for coming to our meeting. Mainly.
You just stole my thunder,
did.
Harry, except you didn't also thank Cassidy for being here.
Oh, and thank you, Cassidy, as well.
So we all thank everyone who was here tonight as well. And thank you all for joining us. It's we're a public commission versus a public meeting, and they're only better when the public joins us. So thank you, everyone. It's 9:09. I'm going to motion that we adjourn.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is such adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Night.